Today has not gone as planned. My original thought for this video was to go outside and show you around our little garden area and show what we have in there right now and kind of clean up the area, because we haven't really gotten out there at all this year except to just trim some of the raspberry bushes back. However, last night we got about 3 inches of snow, so that was a change of plans. So instead, I thought I would share with you what I have started planted, or what seeds I have started so far this year. I got a late start on them. I was going back and forth whether I wanted to start from seed again this year, or if I was just going to buy plants, or what I wanted to do. And so I decided, you know what, I have the seeds, I'm just gonna go ahead and start some of the stuff from seed. And then there are some things that this year I think is that it'll just work out better if I buy the plants. I was planting my seeds and I needed to have something to put in there to mark what type of plant it was going to be. And I had these little wooden tongue depressors, and I broke them into pieces and wrote out on there what I was planting. The problem, I didn't use the right type of ink, and they ended up, I don't know if I can get this out of here, but they ended up, if you can see that, they just bled all over the place. I went to the store to try to find some little garden tags to rewrite all the names on, and I couldn't find any. They were all sold out. So I think what I need to do is maybe I'll just get some painter's tape and use a Sharpie and write down what we have. At least I kept the seed packets of everything I planted. What I did was every year I go and I plant pepper seeds, and I hardly ever get any peppers. The only things that I've been able to get are some tiny, tiny bell peppers and a few jalapenos and maybe one cherry pepper. So this year I did plant a couple pepper plants, but I think I'm just gonna go and buy the plants because they will have gotten started way before mine. Professionals will grow them better than I can, and I am sure I'll just be happier if I do that. But what I did plant here, I planted 2 different types of onions. I planted the Walla Walla onions because those are long day onions, and that's what will grow best in my area. I am in central New York, and until about 2 years ago, we were, I believe, a B or 5B zone, and now they're saying that we're 6B. However, we're still getting snow, and it's the middle of April, and our temperatures don't really look very promising. So I don't know what's going on with that. I'm going to keep going with what I was planting at before. It just makes me too nervous to start planting things out in the gardens too soon. The other onions that I planted this year are the red burgundy, and I'm looking to see, because I don't know if these are long day or short day. So these ones are a short day, so I'm not sure how these are going to turn out. We'll just keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully they will be okay. I'm still kind of new to onions. I've only successfully done the bunching onions. Last year I did, and I got quite a few of those and was really happy, so I did plant more of those this year. I was looking at some videos, and it said that I should trim these trim them back about 2 inches or 1.5 inches. So I need to do that as well. I don't I think I need to trim these first and then maybe I'll transfer them after, because it said don't trim them again after you've transferred them. We are planting here. We decided we want to have a small cutting garden for flowers, and so I planted a bunch of carnations. I already have a few different types of plants in the garden. I have a couple of packages of zinnias that I'm going to direct sow this year, and as soon as I can get outside, I will show you what the plan is and where those will go. Here are several different types of tomatoes, and this is where my problem lies, is that most of these tomatoes were planted where I don't know what happened. We planted too many seeds in here. So I'm going to divide all this up, and then also I was able to rewrite on these little sticks what we have here. So these ones are going to be okay, but I have to be careful when I water not to get these wet until I make new tags. When I planted the tomato seeds, I planted way too many. I don't know what I was thinking, but there's way too many in each of these. So I need to start taking them apart and very carefully separate them. I have a whole bunch of heirloom tomatoes. It was a mixed variety that came from Survival Garden Seeds, and they worked so well when I planted them last year. I got so many different types and they grew huge, some of them. I also have some Brandywine, which I think those were the ones that didn't do that great for us last year. I also have back here some cherry tomatoes, and I find that I love having those in the garden. We can just grab a bunch of them at lunchtime and eat them, and they lasted all summer long, just picking and enjoying. I planted a few different basil seeds and parsley. We also have some cilantro, which I do those every year. And usually my parsley comes back each year and I don't have to replant it. Last year I noticed it wasn't as good as it had been, so I decided just to plant a couple of extra plants and maybe start new. We also planted a few celery seeds, and then we have something else we planted here, which that is where the name tags really bled, and I'm not sure what that is. So it will be our surprise planting. Here are our pepper plants that we did end up planting. They're jalapeno. We do eat quite a bit of them. And then these are supposed to be our cherry tomatoes, and those are not coming up. And I'm wondering if the mistake was that instead of planting them in there, they were planted in these same cells with the heirloom tomatoes, and that's why we got so many plants coming up in here. So I'm going to try to weed through these a little bit and separate them, and maybe I'll move some over into here. And then I do have these little seed starting cells, which they say they're biodegradable, but honestly, I find that it takes a very long time for these to break down, and I don't really enjoy using them that much. But this is all I can really get at our local store for seed starting trays. What I usually end up doing is planting them in here, and then when I want to transplant them in the plant into the garden, I rip this off of the plant and throw it away, because maybe they're biodegradable, but it would take much longer for that to break down than what my plant is going to last throughout the season. So I am going to start working on a few of these tomatoes. So I'm gonna start over in this corner, and I'm only gonna fill a little bit of the tray to get them started. Now these, where I started my seeds, were just some little trays that I had bought flowers in last year, and then I saved them for this exact purpose because I was hoping not to have to use these other trays this year, but I didn't have enough. I don't really know how to get these out of here, so I'm gonna kind of just stick my finger down and try to ease them out. Hopefully we don't destroy them in the process. All right, so if I can't get each plant separated, I'm going to just put a couple in each cell, and then I'll pinch one off later. So actually what I might do is remove the dirt, because with tomato plants I did learn that you can bury them quite deep with the stem and more roots will start growing out of the stem where those little hairs are. And then I'm gonna just pinch off some of the ones that don't look as strong. This is just ridiculous. All right, so these I believe I am going to sacrifice those. And I'm going to just try to keep a couple, and whatever ones don't make it, so be it. Because we have far too many plants in here. And something will work out. And then I'll just pinch off quite a few of these. I'm going to just try to get a couple of these plants into the cells, and I'm not really going to worry about how many I lose, because honestly there were way more planted than what we will ever eat. And if none of them end up working out, I can always purchase some plants at the local garden center. But you live and you learn, and I just see this as a learning experience, and let's just make sure we don't do this again next year. All right, so we ended up getting several plants transferred over into these other cells. I have a whole bunch of tomato plants that I am just going to throw into the compost pile, and I'm going to concentrate on these ones. They look pretty good. I was able to separate them out, and I'm not really sure what I'll end up getting, what types, which doesn't really concern me too much because we will eat whatever fresh tomatoes we get. I still do have some brandywine over here, and I'm going to leave them right in the cells that they're in, and then I'm just going to break off the ones that I'm not planning on keeping because I don't want to move them and possibly damage the roots on those. And then these ones I'm just going to keep watching, watering, and keep them under the grow lights. Hopefully I'll at least get one plant from each cell or a few plants here and there to get out to the garden. We don't really have that large of a garden, so whatever doesn't make it to the garden, if we have extra space, I'm sure I'll have other plants that I'll want to put in there. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to do with these 6 cells here that nothing ever ended up growing up. And maybe I'll start some lettuce in those and get that out into the garden in a couple weeks. But so far the plants a little crowded but healthy. I will end up separating these onions soon. I'm just going to go through and trim them all, and then hopefully we will have warm enough weather in the next week or so that I can maybe get my potatoes planted and some other plants that will be able to handle cooler temperatures. And then the tomatoes, I usually don't get them planted until the middle, sometimes the end of May, because we do get some cold temperatures in there and I don't want them to die. So I am going to get cleaned up here. I'd love to hear what you're planting this year in your garden, and if you choose to plant something a little different each year, or are you planting more of a basic tomatoes and pepper garden? How do you decide what to plant each year? And hopefully next week I'll get out to the garden area and can start cleaning that up and give you a little tour of what it looks like. We are only on less than a quarter of an acre here, and so we do what we can for the garden, but we don't really have a lot of space out there. Plus my kids love to have the yard to play in, so I have to share that with them a little bit, and I keep adding more garden beds every year, and sometimes they don't appreciate that. But thank you so much for joining me as I share with you the plans for our 2025 garden, and as I try to fix some of my seed starting mistakes. I will keep you updated as the weather improves and we can start getting some of these plants outside. So if you are interested in seeing more, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.